Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Lynch Paints, where this week's video was brought to you by my wonderful subscribers who voted on the Star Dragons chapter. If you like your vote and opinion to be heard, then just click the subscribe button down below. It'll take a few seconds, I promise, and you can have your chance to vote on what I paint next time. And thank you ever so much to everyone that has subscribed and joined along on my little journey with this little channel of mine. I want to try and grow it as big as I can, and with your help I can get there. So thank you ever so much for watching along and joining in. So let's grab our paints and paintbrushes and let's dive straight into it. However, before we get started, we're going to need a selection of paints, and these are all the ones I've used in this video today, alongside which we're going to need a medium-sized fluffy brush, a medium-sized basing brush, and a teeny tiny brush for all of those teeny tiny places. Okay folks, so we're going to start out with giving the model a black acrylic primer, and then we're going to just use a bit of a Zenithal highlight over the top. You can use an airbrush, or you can use just your standard rattle can. I use my airbrush just to give it a nice bit of a smoother transaction. I did use a rattle can beforehand and it was a little bit speckly, so it generally depends on how smooth you want it. You can use either. So we're going to start out with mixing up a nice blue. So I've got here with me a Cantor blue and an Warhammer blue, a nice medium-sized brush. So I'm just going to I'm just going to rinse our brush with a little bit of water. And where's my mixing palette? Here it is, my old little base there. It's actually raising up above the above the rim now. I've had this for bloody years, so you don't really need a wet palette, honestly. So I'm going to take our Cantor blue. It's going to blend it with a little tiny bit of water. And then we're just going to go over just pretty much most of the arm panels. We're going to leave the backpack because that's in a nice silver. So I'm going to go ahead and just paint away. So after the first coat, it should look something a little bit like this. It is quite well, it's not very smooth, let's put it that way. So this is when we're going to do our second thin coat over the top. Now, you may be wondering, why have I ignored my own advice and painted the backpack blue? So I wanted to experiment a little bit. So I wanted to get a base coat of blue, just so then when I paint over the top with the silver, there should be a little hint of a blue underneath. So it's basically just kind of playing around with. I mean, I don't listen to myself half the time, so I just started painting it and thought, you know what, this might be interesting. So again, just keeping up with Cantor blue, and yeah, just thin your paint down just a little bit with some water, and it's going to go over the top. And if you went over the shoulder pads, let's say left to right, with the second coat, go up to down, and that way you're going to minimize the streaking from showing up underneath. If you go the same way twice, it may show up a little bit more. So it's gonna very quickly just go over it a second time, and that way that should smooth out our first coat. So our second coat is now complete, and it's looking a lot smoother this time. So we're going to introduce a little bit of this Warhammer blue. We're going to start to build up our colours. I don't have with me a mid-tone blue, so if you have something like a ultramarine blue, this will work perfectly fine. But I do not, so I'm just going to freestyle this a little bit. So again, if you have ultramarine blue, just add a little bit of that with the Cantor blue. We're going to slowly build our colours up. So it's more of a lightish blue, because these guys, they are still sort of quite a dark blue. Nothing like Night Lord's blue, of course, but They're not a really vibrant blue. So we're just going to add in a little bit at a time, just see how it looks. If it looks a little bit too bright, then just add more Cantor blue into your mixture, just to darken it back down again. And again, just keep your paints thinned with some water, and that will just help with the flow. And it means then you're only putting on some thin layers, so it may look quite bright at the start, but just leave it to dry for a little bit and then reassess if you have to. And then if it turns out that it is too bright, add in some more of the darker colour. If it's not quite bright enough, then you can just go over the entire model with it and then just add in a little bit more next time. So now we're just going to keep on adding in more and more of the lighter shade of blue into our mixture, and we're going to really try to ramp up the blending and the contrast between the two layers. So the Zenithal beforehand did help in terms of getting that base layer colours down correctly, if you know what I mean. So where it was lightest so around here on the leg, and so quite darkest underneath, round like in between the backpack and the shoulder pad and there, it means then our base colour is going to be darker naturally in those areas compared to these areas. So it does help. I mean, Zenithal highlighting, you don't have to Zenithal highlight everything, every single model that you do, because it generally kind of depends on what it is you're painting, but it is a good practice, or a good habit to practice, that's what I meant. So I do recommend it, but as you kind of learn a little bit more about Zenithal highlighting, you can sort of use it when you feel like you need to, if that makes any sense, to people out there that do Zenithal highlight a lot. Or I might just be rambling, I don't know. But anyway, remember to keep your paints thin with water just as you're doing this. And as we're building up our colours, we're going to be working in smaller and smaller surface areas just to really build up that tonal shift between the darker blue and the lighter blue. So I've gone over it probably 3 times now with just building up my colours, and it's looking pretty good. So it does one thing that the wet blending sort of teaches you to do in a way, is to work out where exactly to highlight. So you would obviously build up the colours to the lighter areas, so obviously ignoring like inside the leg, but you're doing outside the leg. Same with the arms, when you do it underneath, you do it on the top. So at this point, when you are getting towards the end of doing the wet blending and you're working in such small areas, it's almost like highlighting. And then it means then you know where to highlight. And well, I mean, Games Workshop, they do look good doing all those really harsh highlights. I will give them that, but it's not really for me. So if you are someone that enjoys that sort of particular style, then you can go right ahead, highlight everything that you can in a really light shade of blue. But I don't know, I tend to favour the more realistic-y style, kind of similar to the old Board World style of painting. So I'm not going to highlight the entire thing, I'm just going to pick out a few areas. So I switched out to a smaller size brush. I'm just going to make it a little bit brighter, not too much brighter. And of course it is thinned down with some water. And then we're just going to just have a look here. Just see how bright my mixture is. And it's quite nice. It's not too bright, it's not too the same as the previous coats. So I'm going to just roll with this for now, but I'm just going to pick out just some areas. I'm not going to highlight the entire thing, but you can if you want to. It's your model at the end of the day, and I'm just a guide. So you can take all my word as sort of gospel, or you can just kind of cherry pick bits that you like and go from there. But at the end of the day, as long as you're having fun, that's the most important bit. So that's the highlighting pretty much done for now, but what you could do, that I have seen before that looks quite nice, is we'll take our lighter blue, And then we're just going to just pop a little bit into some of the corners of the armor panels, and it just makes it look just that little bit nicer, a little bit better. Again, it's optional. The same with sort of doing a bit of a highlight run on the inside of the shoulder pads. I just do it on the side that's going to be sort of more seen, more visible, that sort of thing. So I haven't really done it on the back there, just because I think that naturally the light's not really going to be touching around there. So again, with the whole highlighting thing, it is entirely up to you. But I try and make things just easier for myself, so I'll just do a little bit of highlighting here and there, just to get the point across that I have tried and have made a bit of an effort. But yeah, it just depends on what sort of level of the miniature that you're sort of going for, really. So before we move on to painting up the backpack, I'm just going to go over some of the darker areas with this Black Legion contrast. So we're talking the under armour areas, just being very careful not to go over onto our blue, and obviously the weapons and any other areas that you would like it to be black. So after using the Black Legion contrast, it should look a little bit like this. So while it's drying, because I'd like to get some bolt gun metal, no, it's not called bolt gun metal anymore, is it? No, some Iron Warriors silver onto the bolt gun. We're just going to go and do the gold trim. So I've got some of this nice brass scorpion and a medium-sized brush. We're just going to go. It's going to take 2 coats. So we're just going to do the trim of the shoulder pads as carefully as we can, and then once we've done that, the Black Legion contrast should be dry, and then we can go and have some fun with that. So it's still a little bit wet on the bolter, so I'm just going to go ahead and use some of this Retribution armour just to highlight-ish the shoulder pads, and then that will give us a bit more time for the bolter to dry completely before we start to dry brush. So I'm just going to pick out just the top areas there, and then we're going to go right around the corners, bringing it about halfway down. So we're going to move on to using the Iron Warriors / bolt gun metal, and I've got a bit of a fluffier brush this time, so I'm going to do a bit of a heavy dry brush. Now, if I would have joined into the video at this point, I would have said, oh yeah, we're painting ultramarines, but no, not today, unless people want to see it. Then I'll happily paint an ultramarine. Until then, I mean, they're okay, you know. They get a lot of the attention, which I know that it kind of riles some people's up, but it is what it is. They are the poster boys, and there's probably a reason behind it. But anyway, I'm not going to get into debating about that sort of thing here. So I'm going to do the backpack, just nice and quick and easy. Doesn't matter so much that some of the blue is showing up underneath, because it kind of just adds a little something. Unless it doesn't work for you, then what we can do instead is that we can just apply a null oil wash, just a dark kind of blackish wash just over the top, and then that should just hide some of that blue that's shown up underneath. And I'm just going to carefully just go in with this bit. So probably get a smaller brush for those bits, and then just take this silver around for a little walk. So the next item on the menu is going to be some of this lovely Runefang steel. So it's a nice, very vibrant, very bright silver. I'm just going to kind of rinse off, kind of brush off the excess of that Iron Warriors, a little bit of fluff attached there. And we're going to just dry brush over the top of the backpack. one of the few last things that we're going to do is we're going to paint the belts and any sort of pouches or satchels that you may be carrying. Then we're going to use this Mornfang brown, turn around so you can see, there you go, and Abaddon black, just going to mix the two together. It's about 50-50 ratio, and because we put down a black base to start with, we're just going to thin it down with a little bit of water, and that way it's going to make a nice dark brown. Then once it's dry, we'll just add Mornfang brown, just pure Mornfang brown, as a highlight over the top. And really on this miniature, that is the only area that we're going to need the brown. So yeah, so wait for that to dry. I'll do a highlight afterwards, and we'll move on to the next step. So moving on to using some of this lovely null oil. So we're going to bash the camera. Yeah, that's smart. One of the final steps that we're going to do is that we're going to use some of this null oil, and then with a thin brush, I'm just going to work this into the recesses of the armour, just to make it stand out, and also just because, well, it does need doing really. So be nice and careful with it. Take your time, try not to rush, and then we'll move on to probably doing the lenses next. So after all that null oil nonsense, we're going to move on to the eyes. So I'm going to start out with just using pure black on that as a nice base layer first. So using a nice thin brush, I'm just going to try not to get that over. And just a little bit there. That's another benefit as well with having your paints thinned down, is that if you do make any mistakes, you can just quickly rub your thumb, finger, or a bit of tissue over the top, just to hopefully get rid of any mistakes. So we have our red, Blood Angel's red, no, Mephiston red, that's what it's called now. I should know these, but sometimes my brain just jumps to the older names. So I'm going to mix this in as about of a 50-50 mix, and then we're just going to paint the first 2/3 of the lenses, leaving the back area as dark as we can. Go. And then, rinsing that off, we're then going to use pure Mephiston red. Just going to pop a little bit in the front area, so looking at the first third. Just a little bit there. And then chuck the model just for good measure. And next, we're going to mix in a little bit of orange. So I've got some of this lovely squig orange here. It's the only orange that I have, so it will do. So we'll just mix that in. Doesn't have to be an exact like 50-50, but as long as it's just brighter. And I'm just going to pop a little bit at the very, very front. Just there. And that helps just to create a nice little glow effect. Now the thing that's really going to sell it is just a tiny bit of white at the back of the island. So I'm going to grab a much thinner brush and some white. Then we're going to add just a teeny tiny white dot just at the back, and that will help to sell that reflective look that we want. There we go. So I'm going to move a lot of this stuff out of the way, probably bar the white, and we're going to paint the logo. So I've got my two paints of choice. I've got this Corax white and White Scar. So the Corax white is a base colour, so it tends to be a lot thicker and it goes on to previous colours a little bit better than your layer colours. Also, it is a slightly darker white, more like a very, very light grey, so it's going to be a good one to start out with. I'm going to pick a nice thin brush with a nice point, It's going to thin our paints down as well with water. And I'm just going to load up the logo, so apologies for any little camera wobbles. There might be one or two. Cool, so I've got the logo now in front of me. So let's get cracking. And so this is how I went about painting a Star Dragon Marine for your Marine armies. It's been a really fun one to do. I love painting any kind of chapter that has any association to dragons. Absolutely love them. I mean, just check out my Dragon Guard homebrew chapter video guide that will be in the description down below. I absolutely love them. I think that Games Workshop needs to have more dragon-esque chapters out there. I know there's the Black Dragons. I don't think I've done a guide for them yet. That's going to be on the list. But again, this video was brought to you by my wonderful subscribers that had voted on this week's video. So if you want your voice to be heard, then hit the subscribe button down below and join in with the voting when that comes up, sort of towards the start of the week, kind of midweek time that I put it up. And if you like this video, then show your appreciation with a like and share it with your friends. I do have the super thanks button down below as well if you would like to consider donating just a little bit towards me. That would be massively appreciated as always. If you want to pick up some Marines for yourselves, then I've got a link for Wayland Games in the description. It's a affiliate link. So if you wanted to increase and expand your Marine armies, then check them out. They're fantastic. And as a final thing as well, I will be putting some of these, some still images and some videos over at my Instagram page at Lynch Paint, so you want to check me out over there as well. That would be awesome. So without further ado, stay safe, stay beautiful, and we'll see you all next time.